A City of South Fulton police lieutenant says Shakia Perkins has been charged with the murder of Corneisha Perkins November 16th and more. He confirms the victim was also known as Corneisha Butler, a mother of four, the suspect's wife, that the couple had been estranged but reunited.
November 16th, 2022. A 911 call comes in just after 6 p.m. Gunshots. A toddler screaming. Inside an Atlanta home, a mother lies dead on her living room floor. Her name was Corneisha Butler. She was 32 years old, a mother of four. She called the police 13 times, she got restraining orders, she documented every threat, she did everything right. But the system failed her. Security cameras caught the killer walking to her car, pulling out a gun and going back inside. Police found a notebook with Corneisha's daily schedule written down. And on the killer's phone, a text message that was never sent. "It's done now. You can't leave me again." This is the story of Corneisha Butler and how a broken system let her die. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will change how you see domestic violence forever. Welcome to Crazy Dark Files. If you want to help spread awareness about domestic violence and the warning signs that could save innocent lives, then please like this video, share it, and subscribe to this channel. Your action now could help protect another woman who might be in danger. Corneisha Butler was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. From the time she was young, she had a magnetic personality. Friends said she was the kind of person who could walk into a room and light it up with her laughter. Family called her the glue that held everyone together. When there was tension, she knew how to ease it with a joke. When there was sadness, she knew how to bring warmth. Life wasn't easy for Corneisha. She became a mother at a young age, but instead of letting that stop her, she used it as fuel. Her 4 children, 3 daughters and 1 son, became the reason she pushed so hard. Every late night, every early morning, every sacrifice. It was all for them. Corneisha didn't just work one job. She worked 2. By day, she was a registered tax preparer. She understood numbers, she understood systems, and she used that knowledge to help other people while building financial stability for her own family. By night, she worked as a licensed esthetician. She had a creative side, and her clients trusted her. They came back to her again and again because she made them feel good about themselves. For Corneisha, these weren't just jobs. They were steps toward freedom, steps toward the life she wanted for her children. And that dream led her to Atlanta, Georgia. She wanted a fresh start. She wanted her children to grow up in a place where they felt safe, where they had space, where they had opportunity. So she saved, she worked, and eventually she bought a 5-bedroom home. It was spacious, it was beautiful, and it was hers. That house became her sanctuary. It was where her children laughed and played. It was where family gathered for birthdays and holidays. It was where she hosted dinners with friends. Corneisha loved sharing her journey on social media. She posted photos of her home, her children, her celebrations. She was proud of how far she had come, and she had every right to be. Corneisha was the kind of woman who could have been anyone's sister, anyone's friend, anyone's neighbor. She worked hard, she loved deeply, and she wanted nothing more than to give her children the stability she never had growing up. But behind all the smiles and celebrations, something dark was building, and it would soon destroy everything she had worked so hard to create. In 2016, Corneisha met a woman named Shakia Perkins. Everyone called her Shaki. At first, Shaki seemed like everything Corneisha needed. She was charming, she was attentive, she was supportive. Within months, they were living together. From the outside, the relationship looked perfect. But behind closed doors, cracks were starting to show. It started small. Shaki would get jealous over little things. She questioned where Corneisha was going. She accused her of being dishonest. She wanted to know who she was talking to, who she was seeing, what she was doing. The possessiveness grew stronger with each passing month. Then the arguments started, and they didn't stay verbal for long. Shaki became physical. She destroyed property, she made threats. Corneisha tried to keep the peace, especially for her children. She didn't want them to see the chaos. She didn't want them to grow up in fear, but no matter how hard she tried, things kept getting worse. By late 2021, the violence reached a breaking point. In September 2021, Shaki rammed Corneisha's car while she was driving. She tried to push her off the road. Then she hit her vehicle again. Days later, Shaki forced her way into Corneisha's home. She damaged the door frame in a fit of rage, but the worst was yet to come. In October 2021, fire investigators were called to Corneisha's home. 2 of her vehicles had been set on fire. One of them was her pink Mercedes-Benz, a car she loved. The flames came dangerously close to the house. Investigators labeled it arson, and everyone suspected Shaki. Then came the text messages. Shaki sent Corneisha messages that were more than just angry words. They were promises. Soon you will be dead and I'll be in jail, and that's fine. I'm going for 1st degree, not 2nd degree. Stamp that. These weren't empty threats. Shaki was telling Corneisha exactly what she planned to do, and the stalking never stopped. Security footage from one night showed a figure approaching Corneisha's car at 2:15 in the morning. By 2:30 a.m., the vehicle was completely on fire. Shaki would show up at Corneisha's workplace and stand outside for hours without saying a word. She parked outside Corneisha's home on multiple occasions, just watching. She even used burner phones to call and harass her. Corneisha was living in constant fear. Her family noticed the change in her voice when she talked about Shaki. Friends saw her pulling away from social gatherings. She stopped posting as much on social media. The woman who once lit up every room was now withdrawing, trying to protect herself and her children from someone who refused to let her go. Corneisha was trapped, and no matter how many times she tried to break free, Shaki kept coming back. The question wasn't if something terrible would happen. Corneisha did everything she was supposed to do. She called the police 13 times. She filed reports. She documented every threat, every act of violence, every violation. She kept records. She followed the rules. She asked for help. And the system failed her. Corneisha filed multiple restraining orders against Shaki. In October 2022, a court ordered that Shaki had to stay at least 500 feet away from Corneisha. That meant she couldn't go near her home. She couldn't go near her workplace. She couldn't go near her children's schools. But Shaki had a response to that restraining order. She said, "Papers don't stop bullets." No one took it seriously. The police arrested Shaki multiple times. South Fulton police documented 4 separate domestic violence cases involving her. The evidence was clear. The pattern was obvious. Shaki was dangerous, and she was getting worse. In October 2021, a judge set her bond at $70,000. The charges? Aggravated assault, criminal damage to property, terroristic threats, and arson. These weren't minor offenses. These were serious crimes. And yet, bond was granted. Shaki walked free, and she did it again and again. Every single time she was arrested, she was released. Every single time Corneisha reported a violation, Shaki was back on the streets within days. By the time November 16, 2022 came around, Shaki was still out on bond. She was still facing pending charges for assault, property damage, and arson. She had violated restraining orders. She had threatened Corneisha's life in writing. She had set her cars on fire. And she was still free. The system treated each incident like it was separate, like it was just another case. But it wasn't. This was a pattern. This was escalating danger. And anyone paying attention could see where it was heading. Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis opposed the bond. She warned the court that Shaki was dangerous. She said that cases involving domestic violence often involve ongoing danger to the victim. She urged judges to either hold defendants in jail without bond or, at the very least, put monitoring requirements in place so law enforcement would be notified if they approached their victims. But the judges ignored her. South Fulton Police Chief Keith Meadows spoke about the case later. He said,
"We've been in this business long enough to know that violent behavior is progressive."
He admitted that his officers had done everything within their power. They responded to every call. They made arrests. They charged Shaki in 4 separate domestic violence cases. But the courts kept letting her go. Chief Meadows was asked a direct question: should Corneisha Butler still be alive? His answer was simple: I would think so. Corneisha did everything right. She called for help. She filed the paperwork. She got the restraining orders. She documented the threats. She showed up to court. She followed every step she was told to follow. And it didn't matter, because the system that was supposed to protect her treated her case like it wasn't urgent, like it wasn't life or death, like the woman sending her text messages saying I'm going for 1st degree, not 2nd degree, wasn't actually going to follow through. But she did, and Corneisha paid the price. Now I want to pause here for a moment because this is where things get even more disturbing. How many times should someone have to call the police before they're actually protected? What do you think should have happened to Shakayla after the arson? Should she have been granted bond? Let me know in the comments. If you're finding this case as infuriating as I am, please hit that like button. It helps more people see stories like Corneisha's that need to be told. November 16th, 2022 started like any other day for Corneisha. She was decorating her home for the holidays. Thanksgiving was coming, and this was going to be the first time she hosted it in her dream home. She wanted everything to be perfect for her children. Despite everything she had been through, despite all the fear and the threats, she was trying to create joy. She was trying to give her kids something normal, something happy. But that evening, everything changed. Shaki showed up at Corneisha's home. The 2 women got into a heated argument. Voices were raised, emotions were high, and this time, Corneisha had had enough. She told Shaki it was over. For good. No more chances, no more going back. She was done. But Shaki refused to accept it. The argument got worse. Shaki turned to leave, and for a moment it seemed like she was walking away. But she didn't leave. Instead, she went to her car. Security footage captured what happened next. Shaki opened her car door. She reached inside, and she pulled out a 9mm handgun. Then she turned around and walked back into the house. Corneisha's youngest child was home. The toddler was only a few feet away. Shaki raised the gun, and she fired. Multiple shots. At close range, Corneisha was shot in the face. The sound of gunfire echoed through the neighborhood. At 6:00 p.m., a 911 call came in. Reports of gunfire inside a home. Dispatchers sent patrol cars immediately. Sirens screamed through the streets as officers raced toward the address. Families preparing for the holidays heard the noise and looked out their windows, wondering what had happened. When police arrived, the front door was partially open. A neighbor was standing outside, terrified, pointing toward the house. Inside there was a heavy silence. The only sound was the cries of a child. On the living room floor lay Corneisha Butler. She was 32 years old. Blood pooled beneath her body. Around her, the holiday decorations she had just put up were still glowing. The lights, the ornaments, the signs of the life she had been trying to build. It was a horrible contrast. First responders rushed in and tried to perform CPR, but the injuries were too severe. There was nothing they could do. Corneisha was pronounced dead at the scene. Her toddler was pulled from the house. Physically, the child was unharmed, but emotionally, the damage was done. That child had witnessed their mother being murdered. Detectives arrived shortly after. They immediately recognized this wasn't a random attack. This was targeted. This was intimate. This was personal, and it was premeditated. As investigators began talking to neighbors, the pieces started coming together. One neighbor said they had seen a vehicle circling the area earlier that evening. It moved slowly, parking for long stretches, like someone was waiting for something. Others said they heard voices raised inside the home. Then came the gunfire. Forensic teams moved through the house, collecting evidence. Shell casings were recovered from the living room floor. They confirmed the weapon used was a 9mm handgun. Security footage was pulled from cameras around the neighborhood. Every angle mattered. Every second of video could help them understand exactly what had happened. But they already knew who they were looking for. Corneisha's family confirmed what police suspected. The person responsible was Shakayla Perkins. This wasn't the first time South Fulton detectives had seen her name. In fact, they had dealt with her multiple times over the past year. They knew about the car ramming, they knew about the arson, they knew about the threats. They had arrested her, they had charged her. But she had always been released. And now Corneisha was dead. Her dream home, the place where she wanted her children to feel safe, had become a crime scene. The holiday decorations she had put up with hope and love were now surrounded by police tape. The future she had worked so hard to build was gone. And her youngest child, barely old enough to understand what had happened, would carry the memory of that day for the rest of their life. Corneisha had done everything right. She had asked for help, she had followed the rules, she had tried to protect herself and her children. But in the end, it wasn't enough. Corneisha's family didn't need to guess who was responsible. They told police immediately. It was Shakayla Perkins. An all-points bulletin was issued. Officers across Fulton County were told to be on the lookout, but detectives didn't have to search for long. They had something that would lead them straight to her. Cell phone data. Shaki's phone had pinged towers near the crime scene at the exact time of the shooting. Then, minutes later, the signal moved across town. It stopped at an apartment complex tied to her sister. By 10:30 p.m., the South Fulton Tactical Unit had the building surrounded. Officers positioned themselves at every entry point. The atmosphere was tense. This was an armed suspect who had just committed murder. No one knew how she would react. But when officers made contact, Shaki didn't fight. She raised her hands and surrendered without resistance. Her demeanor was strange. One moment she was sobbing hysterically. The next she was calm. Body camera footage later showed her muttering fragmented phrases as if trying to convince herself she had no choice, as if she wasn't to blame. Then came the evidence. Inside Shaki's vehicle, parked nearby, investigators found a 9mm handgun. It was the same caliber used in the murder. But that wasn't all. They also found a notebook. Inside were details of Corneisha's daily schedule, her routines, where she went, when she went there. And on Shaki's phone there was a draft text message. It had never been sent. It read, "It's done now. You can't leave me again." Shakayla Perkins was charged with first-degree murder, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, and cruelty to children for forcing a toddler to witness the crime. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a sudden outburst. This was planned. This was premeditated. And the evidence proved it. When the trial began, the courtroom was packed. Journalists, activists, and community members filled every seat. This was more than just a murder trial. It was a test of accountability. The prosecution laid out their case piece by piece. They showed the timeline of escalating violence, the car ramming, the forced entry, the arson, the restraining order violations, and finally, the murder. Forensic evidence was clear. Shell casings found at the scene matched the 9mm handgun recovered from Shaki's car. Cell tower records placed her at Corneisha's home at the exact time of the shooting. And then there were the text messages, the ones where Shaki promised Corneisha would be dead. But the most powerful testimony came from the people who knew Corneisha. Neighbors described hearing the arguments. They talked about the destruction. They watched Corneisha's fear grow over time. Friends recalled late-night phone calls where Corneisha whispered that she didn't feel safe, that she believed Shaki would one day follow through on her threats. Then came the victim impact statements from Corneisha's children. Advocates read them aloud. The children talked about birthdays without their mother, holidays that felt empty, the silence that replaced her laughter. The jury was visibly shaken. The defense tried to argue that Shaki was struggling with her mental health, that her actions were the result of emotional instability, not intent. They claimed the shooting was a sudden outburst, not premeditated murder. But the jury wasn't convinced. The text messages, the notebook with Corneisha's routines, the eyewitness accounts, all of it painted a clear picture of intent. After days of testimony and hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. Guilty. First-degree murder. Possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. Cruelty to children. The sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. Shakayla Perkins would never walk free again. Outside the courthouse, Corneisha's sister spoke. She said that while legal justice had been served, true justice, bringing Corneisha back, was impossible. 4 children would grow up without their mother. After the verdict, the community came together to mourn. Vigils were held across South Fulton and Atlanta. Balloons were released into the sky. Candles were lit in Corneisha's honor. Social media was flooded with tributes, photos, videos, stories about the woman she was. People remembered her kindness, her determination, her role as a loving mother of 4. She had worked 2 jobs, she had bought a home, she had built a life for her children, and it had all been taken away. But alongside the grief, there was anger. Activists pointed out that Corneisha had begged for help 13 times. She had filed reports, she had stood in courtrooms, and each time the danger was minimized. Each time she was left to face her abuser alone. For many, this wasn't just Corneisha's tragedy. It was a symbol of how the system fails domestic violence victims over and over again. When the day of her funeral arrived, the grief was overwhelming. The sanctuary was filled to capacity. More people stood outside. Her casket was adorned with flowers. Her children, dressed in white, sat in the front row. They were surrounded by relatives who promised to protect them in her absence. The service was filled with both sorrow and celebration. Pastors spoke of Corneisha's resilience, her dreams, her devotion to her children. Friends remembered her laughter, her warmth, her ability to light up a room. They talked about the woman who had overcome so much, only to have her life stolen from her. But even after the funeral, one question remained. How could this have been prevented? Police had arrested Shaki multiple times. The district attorney had opposed bond. Corneisha had done everything she was supposed to do. And yet she was still dead. The system had failed her. And now 4 children would grow up without their mother. Corneisha's story doesn't have to be in vain. We can learn from this tragedy and demand change. What changes do you think need to happen to protect domestic violence victims? Should judges who grant bond to dangerous abusers face consequences? What would you do if you were in Corneisha's situation? Share your thoughts below. Police Chief Keith Meadows admitted his officers did everything they could.
I feel like you as police did your job, but the court system let you down.
We do. We see one case after another where, the victim actually reached out to us and we responded appropriately.
They responded to every call. They made arrests. They charged Shakayla in 4 separate domestic violence cases. But the courts kept releasing her on bond. District Attorney Fani Willis opposed the bond. She warned that Shakayla was dangerous, but the judges ignored her. The system saw the warning signs, and it allowed them to be ignored. So how do we stop this from happening again? Here are 5 critical changes that need to happen. First, courts must take domestic violence seriously when there's a documented pattern of escalating abuse. Judges should be required to deny bond when a victim's life is at clear risk. GPS tracking should be mandatory for offenders who are released on bond. Corneisha's case proves that when judges grant bond to individuals with clear violence patterns and explicit threats, lives are lost. Second, law enforcement, courts, and social services must work together. Domestic violence needs to be treated as a pattern, not as isolated incidents. In Corneisha's case, police documented 4 separate domestic violence cases, but the courts treated each one independently. A coordinated system would have recognized the escalating danger. Third, victims need more than restraining orders. They need safe housing. They need financial support. They need access to counseling. Community organizations and shelters need adequate funding. Corneisha had a restraining order, but as Shakayla said, papers don't stop bullets. Fourth, friends, family, and neighbors must take threats seriously. They must support victims in seeking help. Silence and inaction are deadly. If you see signs of abuse, reach out, offer support, encourage the victim to seek help. This isn't just about Corneisha. This is about every victim who does everything right and still isn't protected. Corneisha Butler's life was defined by love, resilience, and fierce devotion to her children. Her tragic death is a stark reminder of the dangers faced by domestic violence victims every single day, and it shows the urgent need for systemic change. As her family and community continue to mourn, they are calling for action. They want to ensure that no more lives are lost to preventable violence. This isn't just a true crime story. It's a call to awareness and advocacy. We need to support victims, we need to demand accountability, and we need to work together to build a system that truly protects those at risk. As Corneisha's story shows, silence and inaction are not neutral, they are deadly. 4 children are now growing up without their mother. They carry forward a legacy of love, but they also carry the reminder of what was stolen from them. So I want to ask you this. Will we let Corneisha's death be just another statistic, or will we demand the change that could have saved her life? If you believe domestic violence victims deserve better protection, leave a comment saying, "Justice for Corneisha." Let's make sure her story is heard. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and remember, if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, reach out. You are not alone. Corneisha Butler deserved better, and so does every victim who comes after her. Rest in peace, Corneisha. Your story will not be forgotten.